Hello, and welcome to another episode of In Real Life with Edrina. My name is Edrina. I am the owner and accountant here at Accounting by Edrina. And in today's video, I have a super special guest. Her name is Melanie. I would consider her kind of like a mentor, business consultant for me over the past 5 years and even longer. I've known her longer than that. She has meant so much to me. She's left a really huge impact on my life. And I'm so excited that we have finally recorded some of our conversations. Sometimes we like to discuss data, sometimes we like to discuss systems, just all around like really interesting conversation that we have in our free time. And in this particular conversation, we're going to be talking all about nonprofits. So Melanie is a consultant for nonprofits. She's also a CFO. And so she has a lot of years of experience when it comes to knowing some of the mistakes that nonprofits make. So stay tuned for this episode. Go ahead and click the like button down below. Hit subscribe so you can be the first to know of new YouTube videos. And make sure to leave a comment down below if you have any kind of questions related to our conversation. I'll make sure that we're in there answering your questions. All right, let's jump right in. Welcome back, Melanie. I really appreciate that we are carving out time to do this and creating a second episode. So I know that you introduced yourself in the first episode, and we talked a little bit about strategy and business, and we were talking about nonprofits kind of like weaved in and out of the conversation there. So I thought we could talk a little bit more about nonprofits in this video. We haven't really discussed a lot about nonprofits for my YouTube channel, so I'm excited to bring that conversation over here to YouTube. And I think the first thing that I just want to start with our conversation is what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see nonprofits making? And this can be anywhere from like how they market themselves to their finances to leadership. We can talk about all of those kind of like aspects of nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do I just jump right in, Edrina?
Yeah, just jump right
in. Okay, I can do that. I was saying to Edrina, and she's heard me say this many times. First of all, a nonprofit doesn't mean that you don't make money. And I think being somebody who sits in the chair of the chief financial officer who oversees, a big part of the operation, what it means is that money that you have a surplus for comes back into the organization, and that ultimately the organization's purpose is social benefit. And so we're talking about social entrepreneurship, right? And what does that mean? And frankly, I remember sitting in grad school, and I was so nervous about being in there with all these, future entrepreneurs in business. And here I was, this nonprofit professional. And I remember my professor, my strategy professor, who I absolutely adore, said, Melanie, it was our one-on-one. Look, there is things that nonprofits need to learn from business, but there are things from business that they can take from nonprofits. So do not have this impression that anybody who leads in either area is either better or worse than the other. So I that stuck with me my whole life. So, so with that in mind, I think it's really important to understand. And one of the mistakes I see is that people become very passionate about a particular subject, which is why they wanted to create this nonprofit in the first place, or they're joining another nonprofit. And one of the mistakes is they forget that this is still a business. It's a nonprofit business, and all the money comes back, but it is still a business, meaning you have to have all those things in place that you would expect to see in a business. Marketing is just as important. Raising money, you might hear people talking about in for-profit raising Series A, B money. It's the same idea. We just don't go to the capital market. We go to the philanthropic market to raise the money. And so we lead in that moment, we lead in that space, and we have to have great business plans in terms of our finances and budgets, just like anybody else. So I think that's really important to walk into it with that mindset.
Wow, that's great. I don't think I've ever heard your what the professor had told you back in grad school, and that's really telling too, because from what I've observed over the years, you have always brought the professionalism to nonprofits. And I definitely respect that. I think a lot of people, like you were saying, are passionate about nonprofit work. And so they're passionate about a specific topic. And so that's kind of like one of the things that draws them to nonprofits.
Mhm,
And sometimes we do forget that we do need to be professionals as well in a nonprofit setting,
mhm.
um, and making sure that we're thinking about the nonprofit as a business and having strategy there as well. Now, when it comes to kind of like marketing and fundraising, I wanted to discuss kind of how your perspective is in terms of where nonprofits typically fall short. And I think this is going to be like a hot topic button because there are many nonprofits out there, especially in this current climate, struggling because they don't have enough finances to help them move on to the next phase of their business.
Mhm. It's with fundraising, it is probably it with any organization or business I've ever walked into, it could be for profit or nonprofit, you know, how we generate revenue um is probably the hardest, space that you have to play in a nonprofit. And it's probably the one that draws the biggest blanks when you're like, how are we going to raise money for this?
Yeah, yeah,
And, I think one of the things we were just talking about is, as we evolve in our organization and we build connections with people, it's so important to collect that data as you go,
yeah.
right? So that you building this database of supporters over time that you can connect with either as volunteers or in-kind contributions or direct fundraising asks. And those are those relationships, and you want to be able to really track that, even if it's on a spreadsheet initially,
Yeah.
that you have our constant contact. I mean, not to do a plug for a particular system, but that's the one that kind of came to mind. Any email system that will collect that data, I think, is really important for you to find a way to really capture that and then measure those relationships. Meaning, when's the last time I spoke to so and so? And, in a for profit business, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to keep track of how long has it been since I've talked to that last business partner, customer, you name it. It's the same thing in nonprofit. You got to keep track of those relationships and making sure you're cultivating them.
So how does that in turn, you know, collecting the data, how does that in turn help with generating revenue for the nonprofit?
Sure, and there's a lot of research out there by big companies that have really looked at what the value of an email is, for example.
Hmm.
And what that means is this. So, it might be in one industry that email is worth $25. In another industry, it might be worth $10. And so, what that's saying is, you may throw out 3,000 emails to a particular group of people that you've been, collecting those emails and those connections over the years, and maybe 1% will open that solicitation, right? So then you start thinking about, how much did it cost me to do that email, and how many touch points do I have with that particular group of people, and then what was the return on that? How much money did I get back in contributions as a result of doing that? So I think it's really important to think about, making those connections through emails. And then the second part of that is, um, I was just having a conversation the other day with a colleague, and they said, well, we already sent an email. And I said, yeah, but it's a drip campaign. You're going to send multiple emails. And one of my wise advisors in this space of fundraising said, someone asked him, how many times did you ping people with these newsletters and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
solicitations? He said, you send as many as you can until they start telling you it's too much. And then that is exactly the right amount that you should be at. And I thought, I'd never heard him say that before, but he's absolutely right. That is, you know, it's not just one email and hey, that one didn't work.
Right,
Maybe you're
right.
sending an email and a direct mail because direct mail is still a relevant source of revenue for nonprofits these days. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's wild to me as far as like direct mail is still a relevant source for nonprofits.
right.
I mean, when it comes to touch points, one of the things that I go back to think about is, for me personally, like how much time or how many times do I need to study something in order for me to to get it to set in? And I
Hmm.
think we have to think like that in terms of I'm going to send one email to a member or a constituent or whatever, and you need to send it again and then again and then again because you need to be top of mind, especially for nonprofits, um,
Hmm.
because our memory, like we're just
We're busy.
doing a million things at the same time. You see an email come through and you're like, oh yeah, I want to go, donate
Right.
to them. But then you forget about it because you closed off that tab or you went to the next email and got distracted by whatever else you were doing.
Right.
It's like, yes, keep sending it and keep sending it and be top of mind for your constituents, because that's really gonna be like the most helpful thing in terms of generating revenue. Now, let me think. I think there was another question.
Can I
Uh,
say one thing while you think?
oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. Um, something that you said triggered this. I would say go and study people who do this well, right? So, who's effective fundraisers and nonprofits? Well, we could name a handful of them that are really well. But if you say you're being solicited in a way that you really appreciate,
Hmm.
stop, take a moment. I don't know about you, when I get a direct mail of someplace that I really value, it sits on my desk for a while,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's those people like me, like oh, I need to do that. Oh, it's December 31st. I probably need to take care of that. But there's going to be people who pick that up right away, and that sort of thing. But anyway, so it's you know collect those letters, collect those you know direct mail pieces, those emails that you really like, and start emulating that because
Mm,
people aren't going to keep doing well. Hopefully, people don't keep doing things that don't work. So
mhm.
we could, that's a mistake, by the way, that I see people. They keep going back to the same well, and
Yeah.
they don't try to vary um, some of their pieces. That you kind of have that A/B test if you're familiar with marketing. That did this one do better or did this one do better?
Mhm,
Right? We
mhm.
did it this way and this way. Well, this seems to do better with our folks. So let's try it this way.
That goes back to our first conversation that we had when it comes to like strategically thinking about your business, because we mentioned about how we need to continue to evolve. Things are always changing, and what worked for me maybe 5 years ago isn't going to work for me now. So what worked for you in that first campaign, if it's not working for you now,
Hmm.
try something different. Be open
Hmm.
to changing and evolving. And going back to like the direct mail piece, because this kind of like this boggles my mind a little bit, because for me, I'm the kind of person that like, please don't send me mail. Like, I don't want it. I will sign up for your email list and I will donate through your email, but please don't send me mail. And I wonder if kind of like that's the direction that we're headed in terms of moving everything online. And how will nonprofits continue to grow and evolve when we're doing a lot of things online?
Mm.
Will they stop doing direct mail? Will they continue to do direct mail? What will their campaigns look like? um, any kind of insight for that?
Yeah, I think that something comes to mind is that really understanding, just like with any organization, why do people come to you? Why do they care about what you're doing? What specific aspect of it resonates? And then are you connecting with people who are like-minded and care about those same things? I think you'll hear it a lot is we need to have a strategic partnership. And all I would say about strategic partnerships is this: they're hard sometimes, and choose them carefully, much like you would a partner, right? It's because you're going to be together doing a lot of work together. And if you're not strategic aligned, it makes it a very difficult relationship. But just to jump back a little bit, I think really understanding what do people care about. So I think if you can narrow in on that, then something like a newsletter where, am I giving people a service? Am I giving people information? In addition to, am I asking for their support? Right. And so, anyway, so it was just something that came to mind that when you were talking, that I think in this moment of virtual um, shift, I mean, I think we still want to be together as people. I don't think that will ever change. It's how can I use my tools effectively to do the things I can do that should be digital, and keep in-person things in person, if that's so, and I could go on and on about fundraising in terms of mistakes I've seen. It's let's have an event. And I'm like, okay, events do not generate a lot of money. Okay, let me say that again. Events do not generate a lot of money, generally speaking, because I'll say it this way. Let's say you hear this gala XYZ raised $3 million. What you don't hear is it cost them $2 million or $2.5 million. What was the net on that? And it took everybody in the organization offline for a better part of 6 months. And what were you not doing? The opportunity cost, right? What were you not doing during that time that you could have been doing, cultivating major gift people, your pyramid? Think about your pyramid of giving, right? So the bottom is you're really transactional. You have a lot of people in that net, and you're getting higher and higher in terms of revenue. And you have of annual gifts, right? So you get 25, 50, whatever at the top. And then you have a few people at the top. So how are you treating the entire pyramid during that time of that gala? Right. So that's what I'm thinking. That's not that events don't have a purpose. They do. They're more what we call friend raisers versus fundraisers. That's when you make those connections. And then thinking about how can I use my electronic tools to sort of engage people in whatever type of fundraising activity. And that might be part of the planning process that you're using to, et cetera, et cetera. So
anyway. I like the example that you gave as far as like the pyramid, thinking in terms of like that full pyramid and how you are approaching your constituents in that pyramid. I think for me, in terms of like just trying to drill it down simplistically, I think, when you're getting started with a nonprofit, you want to keep your expenses as low as possible. And when it comes to direct mail, that can be really expensive. And I feel like you can use a separate system online that you can reach almost the same amount of people and still have a really high return on investment. And it would cost you, a fraction of what a direct mail campaign would cost. And so being strategic when it comes to the systems that you're using. And I know that a lot of systems out there start off as a free kind of like system. And then I think a lot of nonprofits end up paying for systems that they don't need, that they don't use, or they're not strategically thinking about that. And so I want to kind of bring the conversation in relation to how nonprofits can use systems better, because I think that's also part of things that we talk about on the daily. Things that Melanie and I talk about: data, systems, bottom line. This is what we do in our free time.
Well, and it's what we said before when you're looking about your strategic plan, that your plan, your goal of what you're trying to achieve, and you have to think about how am I going to raise money, That's one piece. How am I going to deliver a program? That's another piece. And then the third is the operations. And so what you're talking about is the systems and some of the mistakes we've seen people do by starting, and it's, it happens a lot in nonprofits because we don't have a lot of resources. So we take this kind of free thing for managing, our customers or our program people. Then we have another piece for emails, and then we have and so we have all these disparate systems, and none of them talk to each other. And this devolves over time, if not addressed, into an organization that has a lot of systems that don't talk to each other. And so you end up throwing people at that to get the data to go from one place to the other. And I think if you can think about that design and be slow to making decisions about systems and really thinking about what problem am I trying to solve today, and only getting enough software to meet that need. Great example is you have your basic accounting software. And if people are going to pitch you that's something just to be aware of. You are going to get pitched by so many people wanting to take their software, wanting to do XYZ consulting. And let me tell you, keep a good list of here are the problems I'm trying to solve for today. And do not take anything on until those are addressed. Essential parts of your business.
The core part of your business. Yeah. We were recently, Melanie and I were discussing about a nonprofit who had a payroll system that was developed 5 years ago, pre them kind of like exploding. And now they're a huge organization with tons of people on payroll, and using a system that was good for them 5 years ago, but no longer serves their needs now. And I think if you kind of think about that trajectory, in 5 years, where do you want to see yourself grow to, like how many employees? Then you'll think about it a little more strategically versus what really can I use right now that's free and cheap and whatever else, because you're desperate for a system. I think that's such wise advice, is to have that list of questions. Like, what are the really specific questions that I'm trying to answer right at this moment for my operational needs of the nonprofit?
Yeah.
So helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I had somebody, this system is amazing. This payroll system. And I said, yeah, it is. I've implemented that system before. It's fantastic, but it's too much for us. Then the organization I'm in now, and I'm like, we have this other system. It's less expensive and it's fine.
Ooh.
It solves a problem. I don't need any more than what we have. So, yeah. But then on the other side, you're right, Edrina, that being smart about when to scale up. And we could do a whole thing on how to scale up. We both have been through multiple organizations as they scaled up, and the pain points that you see as you go along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also something that you can think about too, like as you're building your nonprofit, is scaling, like I think at a certain point, if you do scale too fast, you're going to break all of the systems that you already have in place. So scale up, build the system, scale up, build the system. You want to do it more strategically than you did when you first started your business, because I think if you just kind of explode like this nonprofit did, your systems are going to start to show kind of like where their shortfalls are, and then you're left up the creek without a paddle, basically.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about this one small nonprofit that I was working with, and I think they had 5 different points of sale of ways to give them money. And, one of my biggest things, I walk into any organization, don't care what kind you are, I'm like, never make it hard for people to give you money.
Yeah.
Never. That it needs, number one, make it easy for people to give you money and do that transaction.
Yeah.
So when with this organization had these multiple points of sale, um, it was impossible, virtually impossible for the staff to really keep up with monitoring all of that. And inventory became an issue for them, and
Mhm.
they couldn't tell you at any given point how they were a nonprofit that that had products. And so you have you can't um, you can't escape thinking about best practices even from the beginning.
Mm.
And if you don't know what best practices are, like we said before, start talking to people of what you've learned. Who's really great resources are your accounting team, whether that's in-house or out-house. They've seen it all.
Mhm.
They've seen what's worked and what's not. They've probably been around for the implementation. Talk to CPAs, talk to accountants. They know
Mhm.
kind of the trouble spots that you've seen along the way when it comes to data and systems.
Yeah, yeah, I love that advice. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that we were able to carve out this amount of time in order to get these videos done today. And do you have any kind of like closing thoughts for people watching this video?
I would just say that, you know, hire the best people you can, surround yourself with great volunteers. And the number one thing is in fundraising and building your business, is the only way you can do that is to ask,
Hmm.
and to ask for as much help as you can.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melanie. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's good talking with you.
You too. I can't believe how much ground we covered in that conversation when it comes to nonprofits. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments section below, and I'll make sure to be looking at those questions and maybe even doing a future video about nonprofits here on my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.